Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe family of companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Trebas Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
We begin tonight with some breaking news. A brush fire threatening homes in Spring Valley. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. The fire was reported this afternoon off Miller Anita Lane and Miller Ranch Road, south of State Route 94. CAL FIRE says it burned 12 acres and is 20% contained. Authorities evacuated people from homes closest to the burn area and advised others nearby to shelter in place. Edwards Cinema on Hamishaw Road in Spring Valley has been designated as an evacuation point. And we will, of course, continue to follow this story, and we will bring you the latest on kpbs.org.
Managed to go just a few stray showers and thunderstorms across the region, but tonight all is pretty quiet. Some low clouds near the coast. Temperatures falling to 70 in the city. We'll see that marine layer thicken, and I'll tell you how your forecast is changing coming up.
Students in the San Diego Unified School District returned to class today. KPBS reporter Katie Anastas stopped by Crawford High School this morning, where students and staff were ready for a new year.
It's the first day of school at Crawford High School. For incoming freshmen Kaylee Sok and Kira Kwan, it brings up a mix of emotions.
I'm pretty nervous because it's like a new school and I don't really know that much people, but I'm also super excited because I like socializing a lot.
There's a lot to look forward to this year, says Crawford principal Rashawn Villery. One is the new PE program focusing on swim and water safety. 2 summers ago, a Crawford student was celebrating his graduation at Mission Beach and drowned there.
This program represents a significant step forward as we transform a past tragedy into a triumph for our students.
Other changes are coming to the school's Law Academy, which offers classes, mentorship with local attorneys, and field trips to places like El Cajon Superior Court. Students can participate in the mock trial team and help mediate conflicts between their peers. This year, Crawford also plans to launch a teen court program.
Say if juvenile's caught shoplifting. Part of that diversion program is their choice is they can go to the teen court. So in here we would have students as the jury. We would have an actual judge or an attorney up there, and the students get to ask the parents questions, the juvenile questions, and then they come up with consequences.
This school year starts a week earlier than last year. The district says the new calendar allows the first semester to end before winter break, so students don't have to worry about end of semester projects and exams during their time off. Katie Anastas, KPBS News.
As the new school year begins, a consent form is resurfacing years of debate around San Diego Unified's JROTC program, and that story is coming up. Prosecutors in San Diego are planning a crackdown on wage theft. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says many victims of wage theft have no idea that it's happening.
The San Diego County District Attorney's Office recently won a state grant to increase prosecutions of wage theft. DA Summer Steffen says it's rampant and underreported, largely because labor laws are complex and poorly understood by both workers and their employers. But she says ignorance of the law is no excuse.
You know, when you see a theft in a store, it's more visible and clear that it is theft. But it's just as clear to me and to our team that it's theft to take away someone's wages that they earned.
The think tank's Center on Policy Initiatives released a report on wage theft last month. A survey of more than 800 workers found 87% had experienced some form of wage theft in the past 12 months, and about half experienced it regularly. Minimum wage violations are among the most common. California's minimum wage is $16 an hour, but in the city of San Diego, it's $16.85.
So one way that someone might be underpaid in terms of the minimum wage is that they might work some hours in the city of San Diego and some hours outside of the city, but be paid only the state minimum wage, even when they're working inside the city of San Diego.
If you think you might have experienced wage theft, you can contact the City or County Office of Labor Standards and Enforcement or the District Attorney's Workplace Justice Unit. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
Vice President Kamala Harris's running mate is making a solo trip to Southern California. Tomorrow, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is attending the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees International Convention in Los Angeles. Then he is scheduled to speak at a fundraising reception in Newport Beach. Meanwhile, we are learning more about President Joe Biden's decision to step out of the race. Julia Benbrook reports.
Late July. In his first interview since he withdrew from the race, President Joe Biden is reflecting on that decision. He told CBS that a number of Democratic colleagues in the House and Senate thought his candidacy was hurting them in down-ballot races.
And I was concerned if I stayed in the race, that would be the topic. You'd be interviewing me about why did Nancy Pelosi say, why did someone, and I thought it'd be a real distraction.
Biden says there was a time he thought of himself as a transition president.
I can't even say how old I am. It's hard for me to get out of my mouth. And, but things got moving so quickly, it didn't happen.
After the president ended his re-election bid, he endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris, who is now the Democratic nominee. She's brought a new enthusiasm to the campaign for Democrats, drawing big crowds and raking in more than $300 million in the first few weeks of her candidacy. As for what role Biden will play in the campaign as it moves forward, he says he plans to be out on the campaign trail, rallying support.
I was talking to Governor Shapiro, who's a friend. We have to win Pennsylvania, my original home state. He and I are putting together a campaign tour in Pennsylvania. I'm going to be campaigning in other states as well. And I'm going to do whatever Kamala thinks I can do to help most.
The president and the vice president are hosting a joint event in Maryland this week. It will be the first time the two of them have shared a stage since Biden made the decision to withdraw, marking a key moment in the passing of the torch. Reporting in Washington, I'm Julia Benbrook.
The County of San Diego celebrated a milestone in its effort to boost mental health care access today. Supervisor Tara Lawson-Reamer and behavioral health experts gave this update on the progress of its mobile crisis response teams. Since 2021, MCRT has responded to 13,000 calls and served over 7,800 San Diegans in crisis. Over 80% of calls are diverted from emergency departments and hospitals, and more than half of calls were successfully resolved without the need for transportation for additional services.
The numbers behind this service make clear that it works, that it is significant at the population health level. And MCRT is about understanding mental health as primarily a healthcare rather than a law enforcement issue, and as something grounded in patients' rights and in an understanding of how traditional responses to mental health care have often further traumatized those we are seeking to help.
And Dr. Bergman says the county budget for the 2025 fiscal year will allow MCRT to increase from 34 to 44 mobile crisis response teams. If someone you know needs a mobile crisis response team, you can call 988. Narcan vending machines have popped up throughout San Diego County as a tool to reverse opioid overdoses. But that tool has had a slower rollout on tribal properties. KPBS North County reporter Tanya Thorne tells us about resources now available at one casino.
Over a dozen naloxone vending machines are available throughout San Diego County, but they're not all the same. We've seen more and more Narcan vending machines throughout San Diego County, but this one right here is the first smart vending machine, and it's here on tribal property at Casino Palma. And now it still does the same thing and dispenses your fentanyl test strips as well as your Narcan naloxone spray, but it does more than that. It is touchscreen and it's got new and innovative technology. You can click here on the home screen and get services, hundreds and hundreds of services between San Diego and Riverside County. It has a map that shows where you are and where the services are around you. And there's things such as shelter and housing, food and health services. And what's convenient about this is that anyone can use this. You don't have to be a tribal member or a casino patron. Anybody from the public driving through Casino Palma here on the road can come and use this machine.
According to the numbers, we don't have a big fentanyl problem, but as tribal council and as a community member, we know it's here. And so we thought it would be a great idea to not only service the tribe, but also the community as a whole.
Chairman of the Palma Band of Luiseño Indians, Temet Mahol, said the tribal council approved the purchase of the vending machine unanimously. That followed support from Casino Palma.
It's not indicative of an issue that's particular here, but we know it's ongoing, and all it takes is one person to have issues with addiction, and this machine could be life-saving, and if it saves one life, then we all want to be part of that.
The machine is located outside of the casino in a discreet location for anonymity. Amy Knox with the Harm Reduction Coalition says the machine can be a lifeline for communities on the outskirts of San Diego.
We only all have so much funds to be able to support outside services and referrals, so this machine really helps with that. We don't have a caseworker or a case manager sitting here giving you referrals. You can come up anonymously and get the referrals that you need without having to see somebody. And so sometimes that opens up a whole new level of care for people, removes a barrier that people may have.
The machine has had over 2,500 inquiries in a time span of almost 2 months. Reporting from Casino Palma, Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
Americans are tapping into their homes' value at rising rates. New economic data reveals home equity loan debt is piling up. Patrick Cornell talks about the pitfalls and best practices.
For 9 straight quarters, balances on home equity lines of credit rocketing up. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York reporting $4 billion added to that amount last quarter, $40 billion over the last year, totaling $380 billion in outstanding balances. Many Americans have seen serious increases in home value in recent years. On average, U.S. homeowners have more than $200,000 in equity that could be accessed, but prepare to police your spending.
There are no rules about what you do with the money. So when you pull the money out, you can do with it whatever you want. You can go to Vegas, you can go to Disney, or you can hire a contractor to redo your kitchen.
Bankrate's Jeff Ostrowski says there are good reasons to unlock that money, such as renovations to add value to your home or paying down high-interest debt.
Borrow only as much as you need. If the kitchen project is going to be 50 grand, borrow 50 grand.
Be cautious when using that equity for other investments or paying off education loans. With the average rate sitting above 8.5%, there are risks.
It's a little bit risky right now to tap into your home equity for investments. I mean, I'm not saying it can't be done, but it's probably not the wisest move.
One major red flag, Bankrate reports millennials are more willing to tap into their home's value to fund vacations.
If you have to tap home equity to afford the vacation, you can't really afford the vacation. So, find a cheaper vacation to save some money.
For Consumer Watch, I'm Patrick Cornell.
It's the first day of school in the San Diego Unified School District. Many students will attend Junior Reserve Officers Training Corps. It's a class sponsored by the military. KPBS reporter Katie Hyson says this year's consent form is resurfacing years of debate around the program and its effects on Black and Latino students.
JROTC gives students 3 days per week of physical training. 1 day of life skills like leadership, finances, and first aid, and 1 day where students march and drill in uniform. Back in 2008, Chicano students in San Diego began pushing back on JROTC.
About 20 Mission Bay High School students walked out of school today to protest a junior ROTC program on campus.
They successfully campaigned to remove shooting ranges from schools. Back then, some students were automatically enrolled in JROTC. The district only started requiring a consent form in 2023. The San Diego Chicano Latino Concilio on Higher Education recently sent a letter to the Board of Education about the form. They're concerned it still doesn't give all the information students need for fully informed consent. It doesn't specify that JROTC doesn't meet any of the state's public university admission requirements, or that it's taught by retired military officers. Jennifer Roberson is a district director. She says this year's consent form was already sent to schools, but the district is willing to continue the conversation for next year. She says JROTC exists because students want it.
Students are opting to be in the program. They know that it's voluntary, it's not required. But we do believe that the skills that they're being taught do prepare them to be future ready.
Morse High School senior Joseph Cruz is one of those students who opted in.
Coming out of middle school, throughout the whole COVID era, I was pretty lost.
He says JROTC helped.
it's given me the initiative I needed to pursue greater things.
His sophomore year, he led about 50 students as company first sergeant.
Being able to have that daily exposure as a leader, having that experience, it's really built me up.
He's considering studying law at a military academy.
That is a dream career of mine, being a JAG officer.
He says military recruiters come to class often. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Mark Eisen is Hoover High's senior Army instructor. He says JROTC did start as a recruiting tool.
But after the Vietnam War in the 70s, it kind of evolved from a military recruitment tool to becoming more of a leadership development class.
School staff emphasize the class is about leadership, not military recruitment, but the effect might be the same. Last year, an Army-sponsored study found that Army JROTC students are less likely to enroll in college after graduating high school. And those who don't go to college are more likely to join the military. That's concerning to local Chicano community leaders. Because in the San Diego Unified School District, schools with a higher percentage of non-white students tend to have much higher rates of JROTC enrollment. Nearly all Lincoln High students are non-white. In 2022, a third of their students enrolled in JROTC. At majority white Point Loma High, that rate was just 5%. La Jolla High doesn't have a JROTC program. David Morales was part of the student movement against JROTC in 2008. Now, he's a counter-recruitment activist and pursuing a PhD in racial inequalities in education at Stanford. He says there's a reason JROTC programs have lower enrollment at schools in wealthier neighborhoods.
You have parents who are much more involved because they have the means and privilege to be involved and aware of what's happening, and they're not gonna stand for their kids being constantly harassed by military recruiters or being pitched, a job in the military.
He also says students in lower income areas are more susceptible to what he calls the deception of military recruiters.
We've called this a poverty draft in some cases, it's where it's not mandatory, but because there's so few options, seemingly few options for some people, like it's predatory, we think.
He thinks alternatives to JROTC should be explored.
There are other ways to engage in practice discipline that do not include, weapons and blindly obeying and following orders, that instead encourage critical thinking skills. That does not include careers in war making. We must instead focus on careers for peace and social justice.
Counter-recruitment activists are also calling for an evidence-based review of the effectiveness of the JROTC program, whether it really accomplishes everything it claims. Katie Hyson, KPBS News.
Today was also the first day of classes for California's largest school district, Los Angeles Unified. And this year, a new cell phone ban is set to take effect. The school board passed a resolution in June calling for the district to bar students from using cell phones and social media throughout the entire school day. The policy won't take effect until January. The board says the resolution is aimed at fighting cyberbullying and promoting focus and concentration in the classroom. Nearly 3/4 of U.S. adults are overweight or obese. While genetics can play a role in one's weight, so can the types and amounts of foods that we eat. Mandy Gaither explains why it's so important to read food labels closely and how the 520 rule can help.
The journey to health isn't always easy. Even if you're eating the right things, you may still struggle with weight, consuming something you may not even realize, which is why it's critical to pay close attention to food labels, says Dr. Sanjay Gupta.
First things first, check the number of servings in the package. This is really important. Sometimes you think the calorie count is for the whole package, but in fact, it just represents one serving. A lot of people get tripped up by this.
Gupta says the number of calories and nutrients needed daily are different for everyone and varies based on things like age, size, and overall health. For example, if you have high blood pressure, you'll need to consume less sodium than others.
Now, look at the daily value of nutrients, the DV. It's based on an average 2,000 calorie diet, and it can help serve as a guideline for how many nutrients you should be getting. A good trick to help you gauge whether the food contains enough of a nutrient is to use the 5-20 rule. If the DV percent is 5% or less, that means it's relatively low in the nutrient, obviously. 20% or more, fairly high.
Also, make sure to look at the ingredient list. Gupta says the first few listed make up the bulk of the food, so make sure there's not too much fat, sugar, or salt.
Finally, watch out for words you can't pronounce. If you can't pronounce it, you probably shouldn't eat it.
For Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
Martian water? Well, new data is leading local scientists to believe the planet Mars does indeed have liquid water. Data that was collected by the InSight lander on Mars's planetary crust shows evidence of stores of liquid under the surface. The findings were released today in a report by UC San Diego's Scripps Institution of Oceanography. It is believed that Mars did at one time have surface rivers, lakes, and maybe even oceans, prompting scientists to question what happened to it. Scientists say this may set the stage for subsequent research on the habitability of the planet.
Well, we've had a pretty decent weekend and a pretty decent Monday, but a lot of that moisture, especially for the eastern areas of our region, is going to be shifting its way farther east, which means we're saying goodbye to it. Monsoonal moisture leaving the area. We get a slightly thicker marine layer coming through the upcoming days. And beyond that, we'll watch for a bit more of a breezy weekend, especially for some of those higher elevations. Tonight, the low 70 degrees in San Diego as you work your way out and about throughout the region. El Cajon coming in at 67 degrees. Meanwhile, Mount Laguna 63 for you. And venturing into tomorrow. Like I said, there's that eastward shift of everything. We get more of a southwesterly flow overall. And that's what keeps us drier and even a little bit brighter in spots. Notice how all the moisture here kind of getting shunted even farther east. So it stays in Arizona, Utah, Colorado, New Mexico as we head through your Tuesday. Really no sign of thunderstorms west of that. So even Nevada manages to stay pretty dry, and it's why we will keep a bright time moving through things. After some of those morning clouds burn off, it's a nice day. 79 for the high. Oceanside hit to 80 degrees, as is Chula Vista, and Borrego Springs 108 for that afternoon high temperature. The upcoming days, we're going to stay holding on to the 80s for our coastal communities. Of course, you do have those low clouds, and they'll be somewhat intense Wednesday morning, a little bit thicker there. Then we gradually get a little brighter throughout the day, and there is still some of that moisture still holding on for Thursday, too. As we check in with our inland communities, pretty nice trend here. 90 degrees as we go through time. Lots of sunshine out there. No big complaints and no big changes in the numbers through the upcoming days. Mountain communities will be holding on to a pretty bright time. Maybe a stray thunderstorm trying to come in by Thursday, but I think even that is fairly limited. Towards the end of the week, though, we do add in a little bit more moisture to allow for some of those clouds to pop up throughout the afternoon. However, still probably not quite enough to really squeeze in on a thunderstorm chance. And the deserts holding into the 100 range, lower 100s. For KPBS News, I'm AccuWeather meteorologist Melissa Constanzer.
Another twist in the battle over bronze Olympic medal for women's gymnastics. USA Gymnastics says it will appeal the International Olympic Committee's decision to strip American Jordan Childs of her bronze medal and instead award it to a gymnast from Romania. Laura Aguirre has the latest.
Like many Olympic moments, it's a victory that will hinge on seconds. In question, the bronze medal awarded to American gymnast Jordan Childs after her floor routine last Monday in Paris. At the time, Childs' initial score put her in 5th place, with Romanian Ana Barbosu in 3rd. Childs' coaches immediately filed a challenge, saying the routine wasn't scored correctly for difficulty. At first, Team USA prevailed, and Childs was moved into 3rd, taking the bronze. But over the weekend, a court of arbitration for sport ruled that the coach's challenge was filed too late, after the 1-minute deadline. Normally, a gymnast has until the next competitor takes the floor to file a challenge. However,
because Jordan Childs was the last gymnast, she only had a minute So she had significantly less time to get in this inquiry.
The IOC said Sunday it would strip Childs of her medal and give it to the Romanian. USA Gymnastics says it has submitted new video evidence showing conclusively that the head coach lodged the challenge within 47 seconds before the 1-minute deadline, adding in a statement Sunday that they didn't receive the new video until after the tribunal's decision.
The gymnasts are the ones who are suffering. They're embarrassed. They're being harassed online.
Childs shared 4 broken hearts on Instagram Saturday, telling fans she's taking a break from social media for her mental health. Team USA vows to fight on, with U.S. Olympic officials saying Sunday they are, quote, committed to pursuing an appeal to help Jordan Childs receive the recognition she deserves. I'm Laura Aguirre for KPBS News.
And KPBS has been following the Paris 2024 Olympics online. You can find a recap of all of the athletes from San Diego who are bringing home medals on our website. Just go to kpbs.org/Olympics. And here is a look at what we are working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. Consumer complaints about rooftop solar. NPR's Morning Edition reports on how the industry is trying to repair its reputation after some cases ended up in court. And KPBS Midday Edition will have a discussion on safety and shelters and the challenges in dealing with this part of the homelessness problem. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.